Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar in the Footprint Evaluation webinar series. My name is Alice McFarlane, and I'm the Knowledge Platform Manager of Better Evaluation at the Global Evaluation Initiative. As you might already know, the Footprint Evaluation Initiative is supported by the Global Evaluation Initiative and hosted on its Better Evaluation Knowledge Platform. Footprint evaluation focuses on helping evaluation incorporate environmental sustainability into all evaluations, not only those relating to climate change mitigation or adaptation or other environmental action. And today in this webinar, we're going to be looking at some practical entry points for getting environmental sustainability onto the agenda of an evaluation. Before we begin, I would like to start the session by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the lands in which we are all joining here today from. I myself am joining from Hobart in the state of Tasmania, Australia, and I pay respect to the Muwi Nina people of the Southeast Nation and to elders past, present, and emerging. I also acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you are living, learning, and working from today. A few notes about today's sessions before I hand over to our presenters to introduce themselves. As you would have heard when you joined, the session is being recorded. We will be sharing a video of the presentation section of the session and a written summary of the discussion. To minimize any distractions throughout, we request that you keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking, and we'll try to pick up as many of, and we encourage you to use the chat function to ask questions throughout, and we'll try to pick up as many of these as possible in the discussion part, in the second part. When we do reach the discussion, we then do encourage you to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, to ask a question or make a comment. And we'll also give you a link for joining the Footprint online community where you can continue this discussion afterwards. For now, I'm going to hand over to Jane Davidson to take us away. Thanks, Jane.
Oh, kia ora. So my name's Jane Davidson. I'm beaming in from Seattle in the United States Pacific Northwest. These are the unceded ancestral lands of the Duwamish and other Coast Salish people who've been the traditional caretakers of this land from time immemorial. I'm originally from Aotearoa, New Zealand, most recently lived in Auckland on the traditional lands of the Ngāti Whātua, so kia ora to everyone. Patricia.
Hi, my name is Patricia Rogers. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So I'd encourage everyone who's joining us, if you'd like to pop into the chat your name and where you're from, that would be a terrific start. I've had a bit of a look at some of the faces and names, and I welcome both people I know and new people to this session. We want to start with this in terms of looking at strategies that are for evaluators and for people who commission evaluations. We know that we need all hands on deck to address environmental sustainability. So I encourage you, if you to please pop into the poll, whether you're an evaluator or someone who does evaluation as part of your role, whether you're someone who commissions evaluations, you engage other people to do evaluation, both or neither. And I see you're already well away from me in terms of doing this. That's great. Just give you a few more moments to pop in there. What's really interesting is a number of people are in both positions. A lot of people who are evaluators and a lot of people who are both an evaluator and an evaluation commissioner, and one person who's neither. And so I'd be very interested to hear the different roles that people have. So thank you. Thanks for that. Yep. So can I share the results now? Yep. Here we go. So yeah, so we've got this great spread of people, a lot of people who are being evaluated, and there are ways that evaluators can help to frame an evaluation even when you don't get to develop the terms of reference. Obviously, there's other things that evaluation commissioners can do when they develop those terms of reference. So throughout this, we're looking at strategies for both roles. Okay. So in terms of the plan for the session, Jane and I are going to do a presentation about setting out some ideas, we'd really encourage you to pop into the chat function any questions or comments during that. And then we'll go into breakout groups. Alice will put you into those for 5 minutes to talk about the ideas you've taken away, share some thoughts. And then when you come back to our plenary, please pop your comments in as soon as you can. And then we'll have that good chunk of time to talk about those things. And as Alice intimated, we'd really encourage you to continue the discussion afterwards in the footprint evaluation discussion group. So, Jane, please take us from here.
All right, thanks, Patricia. So kicking off this, why are we doing this? As you know, and you probably knew, that's why you turned up, our planet is facing really urgent environmental crises, including climate change, threats to biodiversity and pollution. At the moment, environmental impacts are usually only included in evaluations where a policy or program has explicit environmental objectives. But here's the thing. Environmental policies and programs are generally created to clean up the mess left behind by something else. The positive impacts of environmental programs and policies are absolutely dwarfed by the huge unintended negative impacts of other programs and policies. That's especially true for things relating to agriculture, construction, energy and transport, but even social, health and educational policies and programs can inadvertently impact the natural system. We're at the point right now in 2022 where we just can't afford to have any more accidental damage to our natural systems, let alone deliberate damage, of course. So our responsibility as evaluators is to identify and report on all important impacts, whether they were intended or unintended, and that includes impacts on the natural environment. So, part of getting this right is being very clear that environmental sustainability is not just about preserving the natural environment or minimizing any further harm. We now have an extremely damaged natural system that needs to be restored. So now in 2022, everything we do has to help restore the natural environment and put the systems and structures in place that stop the harm from occurring. When you think about it, this is actually the same kind of logic we apply when we design evaluation to be in service of equity. Equitable policies and programs don't just stop harming marginalized groups, they address and repair past harm, and they dismantle the systems and structures that were causing the harms in the first place. Oops, sorry, I was forgetting to click the buttons. Okay, I've got a few screens going on here. A common question we hear from both evaluators and evaluation commissioners is how to get environmental sustainability on the agenda for an evaluation. We've identified a number of strategies to do this so far. For example, using existing evaluation criteria, such as the OECD-DAC criteria, building sustainability into the high-level evaluation questions that guide an entire evaluation, pointing to policies or commitments made by organizations or countries that you're doing an evaluation for, and generally making a compelling argument for why this is urgently needed. So in this webinar, we're going to focus on the first two, and we'd also like to pick your brains about other strategies that you've used or would like to suggest. So please add any of these to the chat now or as they occur to you, and we can explore them later in the session. So I'm now going to hand over to Patricia, who's going to walk you through the first option.
Yeah, many evaluations are framed around evaluative criteria. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development Assistance Committee, OECD-DAC, has developed criteria that have been in use for a number of years that are widely used in evaluation of international development programs and policies, but also within countries more generally. So you may not be using the DAC criteria, but you might well be having other versions of these criteria, because the criteria that they put in there about impact and effectiveness and relevance, and efficiency are common types of criteria. So though in this presentation, we're looking at the OECD-DAC criteria specifically, they might well have relevance to you. They set out 6 criteria, and we see that it's possible and entirely legitimate to get environmental sustainability in as part of 5 of them. The only one where it's not easy to do that is around effectiveness, which is just, is it meeting its objectives? And if they don't have environmental objectives, it's not there. But the others, you can definitely look at ways of getting environmental sustainability explicitly addressed. So the first one is about relevance. Is it doing the right things? And that includes equitably addressing the issues in the human and natural systems, and going beyond do no harm to restoration, and looking at the systemic and structural issues that cause that. This is where, with relevance, you can go and look at the actual needs, and having a compelling case about why environmental sustainability is not just a nice thing to have, but significant and urgent, can help that case as to why it needs to be included in all evaluations. Coherence is a new criterion that's been put on the list from OECD-DAC, and it's about how well this program or intervention links with other policies and commitments. And this is where being able to point to existing commitments that have been made by an organisation or a government can be extremely helpful. And it's important for an evaluation to do this, because very often the Environment Ministry in a government is trying to uphold these commitments, but it's not very powerful. So if this is built into all evaluations, it makes it relevant to all evaluations. There's a World Factbook that is one of many places you can go and look up what are the international agreements that have been signed. This is for the EU, but you can put in any country, and it will tell you which ones it's party to, which ones have been signed and not ratified. And this gives you really helpful basis and leverage to say this is not coherent with what you've already agreed to. Impact is a really important criterion in the OECD-DAC list, because it's very clear that it's not just talking about intended outcomes, it's looking at all impacts, intended and unintended, positive or negative, direct and indirect. And in their wording, they really talk about the need to look at negative impacts, particularly significant ones, including environmental impacts, and not just going to what the symptoms are, but the root causes and the systemic drivers of environmental damage. So OECD-DAC has very explicitly put environmental impacts on it. We think all evaluators should do this, because that's how you get a valid judgment of the overall worth, merit and worth of an intervention. Sustainability is listed in the criteria, but it's not about environmental sustainability. It's about sustainability of results. So let's be really clear about that. The durability of the benefits that have been achieved. And this is where being able to draw on predictions about the impacts of climate change, the impacts of environmental degradation is going to be really important and legitimate to put forward. We know that many of the achievements in terms of poverty reduction and food security enhancement are being unwound by climate change and environmental degradation. So the benefits that have been achieved by a project are at risk in the future. And so you can put that on the agenda. And then efficiency is a really important one. And I'm delighted to see Julian King has joined us, and I'd be really interested in looking at how we could link to the work he's done on value for money, because often efficiency is just outputs divided by inputs. It's where a lot of very poor quality evaluation goes on, because people don't look at the real costs, and they don't look at the quality of the outputs, and they don't look at the durability of them. And so one of the common mistakes made is that you only count the costs incurred by the implementing organisation. So if the implementing organisation is in fact making messes that other people have to clean up, or that is reducing their quality of life, that's often not counted. So I think efficiency, again, is somewhere where you have a legitimate role to put environment on the agenda. So 5 of the 6 of the OECD-DAC criteria really give you, not only give you permission, but actually I think oblige you to consider in the environment. So that's the first strategy. Jane's going to talk through a second strategy about key evaluation questions.
All right, so thanks, Patricia. So here's another option for getting environmental issues onto the evaluation agenda. Build them into the key evaluation questions that guide your whole evaluation. So key evaluation questions are the small number of high-level questions that an evaluation is designed to answer. Now, Andy Rowe and I developed this set from a set of generic KEQs that I had been using in my workshops and writings for several years, but they really lacked that natural system focus. So we're bringing them up to date and not a moment too soon. Bear in mind, they're still in draft form and we'd appreciate any suggestions for improvement. There is a link there to where to get them. Let me just click that bit. Okay, whoopsie. So, this is the short version, so you can see all the questions in one hit. So note that the word evaluand refers to whatever's being evaluated. So that could be a policy, strategy, program, project, initiative, a construction, or any kind of change effort, for example. Like most lists of high-level evaluation questions, these KEQs cover relevance and coherence, design and implementation, outcomes and impacts. I put in patterns, outliers and links, durability and overall value. So not all evaluations would necessarily cover all 7 KEQs, but a reasonably comprehensive evaluation would probably include at least some version of each. This list of KEQs has been designed so that it can apply in any sector for any kind of evaluand, any level of analysis. So as such, the language is quite deliberately generic. Each evaluation team would need to rewrite or interpret the questions for the particular population or community, the context, the culture, the sector, the evaluand, and your evaluation audience. Just use whatever wording makes sense to them. If you're commissioning an evaluation, you could rewrite these questions and drop them into the terms of reference. If you're an evaluator, you can adapt them to use as a high-level framework to guide your entire evaluation. And you could also use these KEQs to inform your thinking around sustainability-ready design, implementation, monitoring, and program adaptation. So we've done some unpacking in the full key evaluation questions document to clarify the kinds of things that would be addressed under each question. Now, this may look somewhat brief given how kind of meaty these questions are, but that's quite intentional, actually. Identifying the relevant values and unpacking the evaluative terms in each of the KEQs is a really core part of the job of answering them as evaluators. So that can only be done properly with deep knowledge of the culture and context in which you're working, and also an understanding of the natural system. So that's really like getting down to the details. That's a task for the evaluation team to undertake with communities and other stakeholders to figure out how to unpack those things. So these are really just a high-level sketch of guidelines. Now, we do appreciate that a strong set of sustainability-ready key evaluation questions is going to be pretty challenging for most evaluation teams to be able to answer really well. So part of Footprint's effort is to help create tools, resources, and learning opportunities that will build capacity for evaluators to be able to answer questions like this. Now, I'm sure you're all dying to have a big chat about what we've been talking about, so I'm going to hand over to Alice, who's going to coordinate the small group discussion part of this.
We'll be putting you into small breakout groups for 5 minutes. We'd love you to have a very quick chat amongst yourselves around if you have any questions or comments around the strategies that have been proposed. Do they seem feasible in your situation? And do you have any other strategies that you might suggest or experiences? We're very keen for you all to continue sharing and coming up with these wonderful thoughts and ideas and suggestions and different examples that we've got. We really do encourage you to jump online and join the Footprint Evaluation discussion group and ask a question you didn't get to ask, or if you come across examples in which what we talked about today about getting environment onto the agenda of all evaluations. Any good examples or reports or evaluations that you know of that are happening and are able to share, we really do encourage you to share that with the community, and so that we can start to curate this library of examples that will help us all give us a little bit better. So there's a link in this slide, and if you get the Footprint newsletter, you'll also have a link in there to jump online. When you go to the Better Evaluation link, it'll take you to the thematic page on Footprint Evaluation, and there's a link to join the community there. So thank you very much again to Jane and Patricia for leading us in this discussion today. And also thanks to the Global Evaluation Initiative for its support of the Footprint Evaluation initiatives. We'll wrap up now as we're on time. And I hope to see you all in our third and final webinar in 2 weeks' time in Glocal Week. Thank you again, everyone. We've really enjoyed having you today.